Have you ever wondered why a doctor would switch to a plant-based diet and use it in their practice? Well, I'm going to share my story. My plant-based journey started just about 9 years ago when I had a patient who came into my office, and mind you, I was in rural Colorado in a little town called Rifle, Colorado. So there wasn't a whole lot of, let's say, plant-based or vegan-friendly restaurants or options. So that just wants to give you the setting of where I was. But I had a patient come to see me who had complained about all sorts of issues, but in particular, she said meat and dairy upset her stomach. I said, well, stop eating meat and dairy. And kind of left it at that. I didn't really go into what to eat because I knew there was food that she could eat. And I made note of it in her chart, and she came back in 30 days, kind of like an elimination diet, so to speak. So anyway, when she came back in 30 days, what happened was she said she felt better, but she brought her daughter with her at the same time. Now, her daughter at the time was 16 years old, and she said, tell Dr. Marbas what you did. Mind you, this wasn't her daughter's appointment, this is the patient's appointment. She pulled her daughter out of school to bring her to the appointment to have her tell me what she did. She goes, well, I supported my mom on this, changing her diet, and I felt so good that I stopped both my ADD medications, and I mean attention deficit disorder medications, all on my own in the last 30 days. And I don't think I need them. And I was like, whoa. And her mom's like, So Dr. Marbas, why was she able to do that? Not that she was angry, but she was delighted that that happened, but she was like, my kid's been on these for years, and why hasn't someone told me all I had to do was change her diet and she could have come off of them? I said, I don't know, but that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. So we went into quite a bit of an interview on what they were eating. I said, well, what were you eating? She goes, well, what you told me to eat. I said, no, really, what were you eating? She said, we had fruits and vegetables and beans and grains, because that's all that's left when you pull out meat and dairy. Now, remember, we don't live in a place where there's many restaurants, much less vegan-friendly restaurants. And so they bought their food at the local shopping center. I think we had City Market there. We also had Walmart, and that was it. So they did most of their cooking at home, so they weren't buying processed junk food. And they both felt great. So after that appointment, I dove into Google and said, what is this, plant-based diet and ADD, something like that. But the first thing that came up was Dr. T. Colin Campbell's book, The China Study. Of course, thank goodness for Amazon. So I ordered it, and the next thing I know, it's coming, and I read it. It's like 400 pages, and I read it in 2 days. I was amazed. Like, there literally is evidence of turning off and on cancer. And that was just the beginning. So the next step was like, so now what am I gonna do? I have this incredible evidence laid in front of me. I have sick patients, but I also have my own life. My husband and my 3 kids at the time were 13, 15, and 18. I was like, well, what do I do? And so what happened was, I was like, let me test this on one more patient before I make this complete jump and change to myself and my family. And plus I wanted to spend a little bit more time researching it because I just need to wrap my head around the whole thing. And I had a lupus patient come in during that time. She had been diagnosed about 2 years earlier. She was fairly sick. She had 12 different medications, including highest doses of steroids. She was on chemotherapy drugs that really suppress the immune system, because lupus is an autoimmune disease, meaning that the body attacks itself, and in some cases it can be terminal. It's a very difficult disease to manage and can absolutely be horrendous to deal with. And she was younger than me at the time. And what was interesting, when she came in, she talked about her migraines. She was having migraines most days of the week. She was about 50 pounds overweight, and she's like, I don't know what else to do. I don't think I'm gonna be able to keep working, and I'm just tired. And I said, this is probably the perfect opportunity. So I spoke to her regarding eating a plant-based diet. I told her about the other patient. I told her, I said, I don't have a lot of information, but I have about 2 weeks worth of knowledge. And so would you be willing to kind of be my test patient and see how you do? She goes, I'll give anything a try. And before she left that day, we measured a thing called CRP. It's an inflammatory marker in the body, very commonly elevated in autoimmune diseases. Now, when we measured hers that day, it was 3 times the high normal. And I said, come back in 14 days because I can't wait more than 14 days. I'm so excited about what potentially might happen. So she came back in 14 days, and lo and behold, her CRP had dropped to just outside normal. She was down 8 pounds. Her migraines are better, and she felt amazing. Fast forward 5 months, she was 50 pounds lighter, off 7 of 12 medications, including her lupus medications. And I was convinced at that 2-week mark, and I went home and walked in the door and threw down my purse and said, well, that's it, we're going on a plant-based diet. And I literally threw everything in a garbage can that day. The milk, the meat, the cheeses, everything disappeared. And then I stayed up till 1 a.m. trying to figure out how to feed the family. Now the kids at that time didn't really give me a hard time. They knew that, I cooked the food, they'd eat what they had, or, they'd find something, but that's what it is. My husband was very congenial and said, yeah, that's fine, you're still cooking, you're shopping, whatever, that's cool. They probably thought this was just a phase I was going through and we'd jump back on, our normal dietary bandwagon. But what was interesting was 48 hours later, we had gone to church and we came back home, and our freezer had a quarter of a ground-fed or grass-fed beef in it. And I wasn't sure what to do. That's a large sum of meat to deal with. And I didn't want to give it to anyone because I really felt that would be harmful at this point. And so I was thinking, well, do I give it to, the local animal shelter? What do I do? But when we came home that day, the freezer had, lo and behold, broke. And I don't know if you've ever had that stench of a large sum of meat, and the aroma was a little much, and the juices and everything. Anyway, that meat had to be disposed of, which we did. And we haven't really looked back. And 9 years later, all 3 of the kids are plant-based. Husband's plant-based. He went on to lose a significant amount of weight, 60, 70 pounds. I've gone on to change my entire life and practice, and we started Healthy Human Revolution. We also started the first national telemedicine practice that is completely plant-based. It's called Plant-Based Telehealth, which you can find at plantbasedtelehealth.com. And then of course we have all sorts of ways of helping people transition to a plant-based diet on healthyhumanrevolution.com. I also have the podcast. So we've had that for about 4 years, where I interview doctors and people who've done amazing things. We talk about habit change and just some really interesting individuals who are working to make human health better. And that is my plant-based journey. So I hope you find it inspiring, and please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your plant-based journey, and we'll see you next time.